right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dev 101. Optimize your cloud with AI-based recommendations from ActiveAssist. Come on, clicker. There we go. I am Frank Dice, Principal Cloud Architect at Major League Baseball, and I'm also an ActiveAssist user. And I also have Ryan with me here today.
I'm Ryan Ismert. I'm a product manager for ActiveAssist. That means part of my job is making it easier for all of you to find useful recommendations and adopt them in your environment. We have about 30 minutes to talk to you about ActiveAssist recommendations today. I'm really excited to share the stage with Frank. He's been a great partner for us over the past year or two, and we're excited to show you what we've been working on for the past year and some of the stuff coming up in the future. So this is a breakout session. We'll talk at you for about 30 minutes, and then hopefully we'll have some interactive Q&A to fill in any gaps for content that we missed. I will start off with a brief introduction to ActiveAssist recommendations, help you understand our motivation, and then I'll hand it over to Frank, and he'll talk a little bit about the Major League Baseball experience with the recommendations. He'll hand it back to me. I'll talk about some of the great things we've launched in the past year and a couple of the forthcoming launches that we're really excited to share information with you today. Just for reference, just to see what sort of audience we have here today, how many people in the audience have actually used ActiveAssist recommendations? Not a lot. Great. That's why we're here today, is to help fill in some of the blanks and hopefully show you some ways to get more value out of the product that we make. One point of clarification, just to make sure no one's in the wrong spot at the wrong time. There is a different product called the Vertex Recommendations AI to help you build recommender systems. That is not what we're talking about today. We are talking about a product that makes proactive suggestions to you to help you optimize your cloud environment. So if anybody needs to scoot off to a different breakout session, I'll avert my eyes temporarily here. No one's sneaking out. I guess that's good. OK, let's go ahead and jump in. So several years, it became evident to us at Google and to the industry at large that the complexity of our cloud environments is a growing concern with a number of negative effects for us. In fact, a couple of years ago, half of all of the C-suite executives that were surveyed said that the complexity of their cloud environments was the #1 thing holding back their cloud ROI. That's a pretty grim statement there. These days, with increased regulatory requirements, new cloud products that we keep launching, economic challenges and competitive concerns, the problems have just gotten worse. So when we sat back and thought about it at Google, we thought the cloud is complex, perhaps unavoidably so, but managing it shouldn't be as tough as it is right now. Part of our job is to help all of you safely see through the complexity to reduce your operational toil while keeping you in control. That was our motive when we created ActiveAssist a couple of years ago. ActiveAssist uses data, intelligence, and machine learning to make suggestions to help you proactively optimize your cloud, making it easier for you to build, deploy, and manage your workloads at scale. We make recommendations to you in what we call our 6 value pillars. These are essentially the business value that you should expect from us. Help you manage your costs intelligently, improve your security, improve your reliability, improve your performance. We help you with manageability, which is just a long word that means it should take you less effort to get the same results out the end. We should help you reduce the toil involved in managing your cloud. And then finally, we can also help you improve your sustainability by reducing your workload's carbon footprint. So that probably sounds great, but from the show of hands earlier, most of you are new to ActiveAssist. So your first question is probably, where do I find these ActiveAssist recommendations? You can find them primarily in 3 places. Let's start in the console. Every project has a recommendations hub. There's a link on your project landing page that says recommendations. And if you go visit that, you will see all the recommendations for that specific project, if they exist. If you go there this evening and you don't see anything, bear in mind that every recommendation has unique IAM permissions that you need to grant yourself to see them. They're fairly fine-grained, so you may need to check the documentation pages to determine what IAM permissions you need. Also, many recommendations have an observation window. It could take up to 90 days before our algorithms have confidence enough to start making recommendations for you. So don't give up if you have a new project and you visit it and there's no recommendations there for you quite yet. Also in the Recommendations Hub, you can find a link to a BigQuery export of all your recommendations. This is an export of all of the recommendations in your organization. It doesn't matter what project you access it from, it's still an export for your entire organization. So that setup process will involve you creating a service account with the right permissions to access that entire scope of recommendations. We'll talk a little bit later about some of the enhancements that we've made to that this past year. Also in the console, you can find recommendations in context, as we refer to it. This means as you're doing your daily job, maybe you're on the VM list page, and you'll look at the table and you'll see a recommendation there that says you can save some money by right-sizing this VM. You might be visiting the IAM page to look at your permissions, and you might see some things that say that you have too many IAM permissions or more than you need for a particular principal. So we call that in context. You'll see recommendations as you're doing your daily job in the console. These share all the same state. They're the same recommendations as you'll find in the hub. So if you apply it or dismiss it in one place, it'll be globally updated for you. You don't need to worry about where you take that. And then finally, we have an API. If you prefer an interface or have a system that you want to use other than the console, this is a great way for you to integrate with your platform as a service, your change management system, or whatever your preferred way is to take recommendations at scale. We have a couple interesting blog posts if you're interested in using the API about how to use this to sort of bulk accept recommendations. On that note, I'll turn it over to Frank, and he'll deep dive on Major League Baseball's experience.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ryan. I'm Frank, as you may have heard from, 5 minutes ago. I am the principal cloud architect at Major League Baseball, and I also lead our FinOps initiative. My job basically boils down to how do we make good choices? And that is where ActiveAssist has actually become a trusted partner in the entire ecosystem that is MLB's cloud. It can do everything. Project level recommendations, the BigQuery export with the Looker dashboard over top of it to make it a little nicer. And by the way, something really cool coming on that in a little bit. And the interesting part is how the teams plug into it. The developers, they get that immediate feedback right in the console. Little light bulb pops up. Good to go. Take a look, see what it's doing. Then you're able to surface it up in that BigQuery export for an SRE team to start looking at those larger overarching capacity issues, or if you see VMs that are a little overutilized. Not your first line of defense, but it's another nice trend to be able to keep track of. And of course, our friends in finance, saving money. So Major League Baseball has some cloud priorities, and I myself have some. But first, let me start with a show of hands. Who here has heard of baseball? Yeah, that went better
than I did, Frank.
That went better than I expected. All right, so who's a fan of baseball? All right, we'll work on that. So what it comes down to is fans are all of us. Anyone who's enjoyed baseball, went to a game, or even sitting in the backyard pretending to be a famous player. Don't worry, the puns, they're just getting worse from here. Anyway, the end goal is to be responsible with our cloud usage while providing a good experience to the fans. This isn't meant to be a marketing talk. At the end of the day, my focus, our focus at MLB, is on the fans. And in doing so, we have 3 pillars, similar to what Ryan got into. They are make good choices, lower the amount of toil, and keep finance happy. Let's talk about those. So with making good choices, it is an extra set of eyes in the environment. It's going through all of your projects, looking for these recommendations, these idle VMs. It's able to surface them to the individual teams. We are starting to aggregate them up to business units and also the leadership over this. So everybody has visibility into what's going on. And second up is lowering toil. It does the hard thing. It does the easy things so I can focus on the fun things. If you have worked in GCP, you've probably done researching and auditing through 10, 20, 30 projects. when you start getting any more than that, it takes a lot of time. Once again, this is where Active Assist comes in. It's able to look at all of the projects regularly and spit out all of this information right to you. It's also easier, as I've said before, for the developers to see the recommendations in real time, providing that fast feedback. MLB's DevOps team is a very small core team, and we take shift left exceptionally seriously, where we're wrapping modules and trying to put as much empowerment with the developers as we can, so they can do what they need to innovate and put out cool stuff for baseball. And my favorite example is QA needs to fire up a load test. We've got all the infrastructure up. We run the test. Everything looks good. We go give the report to whoever needs it, sign off, close the laptop, walk away. Those VMs are still running, and costing you money, and running. Once again, this is where Active Assist comes in. We all forget things. Active Assist keeps an eye out for us. And number 3, keeping finance happy. That's an obvious one. Being able to surface those recommendations and watch the big numbers go away makes everybody happy at the end of the day. So let's look at a few real examples of where Active Assist has helped me. VM right-sizing and idle VMs is my first topic. Active Assist allows insights across MLB's entire organization. As I said before, it helps with those simple tasks, going through everything and being able to just pop open a window, take a look at what's going on, do that every couple of days. Or if you're excitable, you can use the API, which is also a very cool feature, by the way. Also, configurable idle detection, now with GKE support. And now what that means is there's a period of time it takes to detect an idle VM. Some people's environments are different. You're able to change that time. Ryan can talk about it more. I will not wax poetic about this, but it's one of the things I'm excited about. Anyway, VM right-sizing, it lets you see the idle, the oversized, and the unused, and sometimes, unfortunately, those undersized VMs. The ones that are just running hot all the time and nobody may know about. Second up, CloudSQL, because data has to live somewhere. It is easy to use. It's easy to over-provision. We are trying to let developers develop and get out of the way. And that's where Active Assist comes in, to keep an eye out for us. So going back to my topic of QA, spinning up that performance testing database, it's big, it's sitting there, it's costing you money. But you still need it because there's integration testing going on slowly after it. Do we just keep it big? How am I going to properly size and scale this? You don't have to think anymore. Give it a bit of period of time. Active Assist provides a recommendation. Make sure it's sane, plug it in, good to go. And my last topic, committed use discounts. Saving money on resources you're already using. Oh, I love the phrase on this slide, and I bet people can relate. Big number, go up. Anyway, committed use discounts are a straightforward way to generate substantial savings across your entire fleet and quickly. When effectively implemented and managed, they are an easy way to generate substantial savings. There are a ton of different types of committed use discounts. There are Compute Engine, CloudSQL, Cloud Run, and several others. We can talk about those after the fact. And they've also come out with flexible committed use discounts, where it's a dollar-based spend versus resource. Thank you, by the way, for the recommendations on that. Speaking of which, I've got my slide notes here. This is very helpful. Speaking of which, the percentage of the recommendation. As you may or may not be aware, baseball is very seasonal. What we do, we have our opening day, our normal run rate, World Series, and then the off season. And it's figuring out how to properly set up your committed use discounts so you're not spending a bunch of money in your off season while still making sure everybody is reasonably happy during the season and making sure we as fans can get baseball. And now we have percentage of coverage in Active Assist. Go in, poke the button, adjust it to say 67%, and it's good to go. And you get those positive recommendations out of it every time. And one cool thing as well with this, these recommendations also tie into the dashboard that gives you a ton of insight. And you can click around, you can play with it, and see exactly how it's going to affect your environment. Long-term, short-term, the date picker, it's a ton of fun. Anyway, they have the deep integrations with the dashboard and the research, and those are three major things that I love about Active Assist. Back to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Frank. All right, hopefully now you have a little bit better idea about how an actual customer uses the actual product as opposed to my philosophical introduction. With that context in mind, I want to share some of our recent launches to help you start connecting the dots for your organizations as well, seeing areas where Active Assist might help you reduce your costs, improve your security, and so on. I'm only going to cover really the last 12 months. So if you're brand new to Active Assist, I do suggest you go and check our documentation, where you'll find more information on some of the, for example, right-sizing recommendations that Frank mentioned. And then after we cover what we've launched in the past 12 months, I'll also talk about two really exciting launches that will come out before the end of this year. Also, this is a great point for me to notice. I don't know what the phrase "it takes a village" originally referred to, but they could have written it about recommendations as well. I'm up here representing the work of literally hundreds of Googlers across a dozen or more teams. And I just want to acknowledge all the hard work that went into these, and I'm going to blithely get up and give one-sentence descriptions of these recommendations. Please bear that in mind. Okay, let's jump into the new cost recommendations. Several new cost recommendations over the past 12 months. Let's start with the BigQuery options. So we launched BigQuery partitioning and clustering, which helps you figure out whether you can use table partitioning or clustering, obviously, to reduce your costs. We also have a recommender that'll help you calculate cost-optimal slot allocation while maintaining similar performance. Heavy BigQuery users have found both of these very useful. The third cost recommendation is the Cloud Run CPU allocation recommendation. This helps you figure out whether your CPU allocation strategy can be switched up when that's appropriate in order to save you money. Bear in mind, it's not always appropriate. Frank mentioned earlier configurable VM right-sizing recommendations. VM right-sizing recommendations have been around for a while, but we recently introduced your ability to add configuration parameters and adjust that observation window to customize it for your organization. And finally, we launched recommendations to help detect idle GKE clusters, clusters with no pods, clusters with no nodes, or low CPU utilization generally. We have new Cloud Run security recommendations. This actually will point out two different insights for Cloud Run. The first of those is it'll detect service accounts that might have excessive or over-provisioned IAM permissions, and it'll also help detect environment variables that may be leaking sensitive information. The other security recommendation that we recently launched is for advisory notifications. These recommendations detect when your advisory notification setup is sending our security notices to someone who doesn't have the right permissions to view those notices in the console. Getting this right is very important for making sure you're receiving critical security communications from Google. If you're not set up right, this recommendation will let you know. We released some recommendations for CloudSQL that'll help you detect potential memory issues so that you can fix problems before they occur, and also for Cloud Functions. This recommender will detect potential opportunities for you to set a minimum number of instances to avoid cold start problems with Cloud Run. And finally, we have a new reliability recommendation. This one's pretty cool. This one's called Service Limits. Many people refer to it as a quota recommender. This analyzes your service usage and identifies resources that may be on their way to getting close to their quota limits so that you can proactively mitigate potential issues there. Besides new recommendations, we did launch several new features to make all of these easier to use. So we recently launched the ability for you to share deep links to recommendations. You can access these links either in the upper right-hand menu of any recommendation details page, or we have a blog post that shows you how you can use the contents of your BigQuery export or the API to easily assemble these. These links you can share with colleagues, you can add them to your change management system. They will direct the viewer back to the console. So they do respect the IAM permissions. You don't have to worry about sensitive information about cost or security leaking to folks who shouldn't see it. We've talked a lot about BigQuery export. This last year, we launched our 2.0 version of BigQuery export. Some upgrades in the 2.0 version include your cost savings reflecting any discounts that your organization might have or credits. This was always the case in the console, but we've just added it to the BigQuery export as well. And we are also now exporting all of your billing account level recommendations. Those are your committed use discounts, and also folder and organization level discounts. Recommendations as well. So now that export has your complete set of recommendations for you to access all in one place. I think it's on my next slide, but also this year we made it possible for you to export that to a non-US data set, which was a pretty highly requested feature by some of our international partners. If you're interested in the BigQuery export, listen hard to one of the announcements I'll make later, which also talks to organization level visibility. And also check online. Some of our blog posts do a great job of showing you how to set up Looker and some of the other dashboarding products to maximize the value that you can get from BigQuery itself. Oh, finally on this slide, we're really excited to announce that security recommendations are now being sent to Security Command Center, starting with IAM recommendations, and the other security recommendations will follow. This means that if you're in a security role at your organization, you can rely on Security Command Center being a single pane of glass for you to do your job in. Okay, I've talked a couple times about how every recommendation has very fine-grained IAM permissions. This is great for control, not so good for discoverability. It means every time we launch a new recommendation, you have to know about it and go add that permission to the right folks in your organization. So we've also launched a global viewer role. If this is appropriate for your organization's policies, you can use this to get viewer permissions, not permission to apply the recommendations, but just to view for all existing recommendations, and we will backfill permissions into this role when we launch new recommenders. So hopefully this will help a lot with folks who've struggled with discovering new recommendations as they come along. I already mentioned BQ export to non-US regions, and so the final feature I just wanted to highlight, if you are interested in using the API, we know some organizations are hesitant to adopt APIs that are not yet in GA. So we have upgraded our dismiss endpoint for our API from preview to GA that will let you bulk dismiss recommendations that might not be appropriate for your organization. Okay, so this is the part I'm really excited about. The stuff we've launched this past year has been real good stuff and is the way that on a day-to-day basis you'll access a lot of that business value inside ActiveAssist. But I'm really excited that I got permission to share 2 upcoming launches that'll be coming before the end of the year that we think will really make a change for you as well. Both of these will be available by the end of 2023. So the first of these is change risk recommendations. You will experience these in context, and they will automatically flag risky changes to cloud resources that our algorithms have identified as being important. And when we present that to you, we will present that the change is risky and why we believe it. You'll be able to view an assessment of why we think it's risky and why we think this resource is important. So for example, if you're trying to delete a highly used project or maybe modify IAM permissions, and downstream that might have an impact on your user experience or your systems running, change risk recommendations can prevent these unintended issues. So you have a second chance, if you will, to not make that change before potentially impacting the system. We're introducing change risk recommendations for project deletion, service account deletion, and IAM permission modification. Change risk recommendations will be available publicly before the end of the year. Earlier, I mentioned that you can find all of the recommendations for your project in the Recommendation Hub. This is wonderful that we have a central dashboard in the console, but we've heard that from all of you that it could be easier and more helpful of an experience. The current experience you've told us is hard to find. You can only find it from the project landing page. It's difficult to navigate. You have a lot of recommendations. You scroll past a ton of cards before you find the thing you're looking for. It doesn't support sorting and filtering, so it can be a bit like searching for a needle in a haystack. And most critically, it's only for a single project at a time. So if you care about an entire folder or across your entire organization, the only thing you've been able to use so far is BigQuery export. Even if you have permissions across the entire organization, the recommendation hub only shows you recommendations for a single project. So I'm really excited. We're happy to announce a complete refresh of our recommendation hub user interface. This new UI will be accessible from the left-hand navigation. It'll support org and folder views that respect the purview picker, no custom picker here. And it'll allow you to see opportunities with the right permissions across your entire organization. When you visit the new Recommendations Hub, you'll land on a dashboard page that gives you an overview of the opportunities available to you. You'll be able to easily navigate by value pillar. We heard from customers this is the main way they want to think about recommendation. I'm working on cost today. I care about performance. So there'll be quick navigation for category by category breakdown. Or you can view all recommendations and you can sort and filter to your heart's content. When you get a list of recommendations that you think is valuable, again, we've heard that this isn't a one-person endeavor, right? This is a team exercise to review the recommendations and decide how to adopt those. So you'll be able to share that entire list of recommendations, sorted and filtered, with your team as well. Assuming they have the same set of permissions that you have, they'll see the same list. We are really happy to announce this will be publicly available for everybody to try before the end of the year. So that's the end of the material that I have. But before we close, I want to give a huge thanks to Frank and to the rest of his team at Major League Baseball for their partnership. They really actively engaged us in both designing and validating our direction for this new recommendation hub experience in the console. And we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here on stage. And none of you would have a new recommendations hub experience if it weren't for the commitment that Frank showed to helping us get better at what we do for all of you.
And thank you very much, Ryan, for letting me complain at you a lot, which has now turned into this new hub experience for all of you. Thank you very much.